Yes, I'm aware that this is the second stabby rip stab stab movie in a row that I've reviewed, but the opportunity was too good to pass up. Not because its predecessor was such a prime example of its genre that it should be the topic of discussion at seminars in other galaxies as well as this one, hell motherfucking no. For my opinion on that barrel of modesty, peel yourself away from the porn. It's hard, I know. Go onto my website, which to be fair is a lot like porn. It's littered with genitalia and barely consented coitus, so have at it. By no stretch of the imagination does Happy Death Day hold a special place in my heart, but I would never turn down the convenience of the pixelated skip, especially for a Groundhog Day-esque franchise where I, and judging by the trailer so has the sequel, can literally copy and paste material from previous work with the same level of guiltlessness that George R.R. Martin shows his fanbase. Right, for me to have to explain the plot in even its barest form, I'll have to dip my dick into a spoiler bucket, so consider this your warning. So it turns out that the time loop wasn't a message from the universe telling Tree to become a better person, but is in fact being caused by a quantum reactor built by some of Bayfield High's science students led by Ryan, that fine for giant guy from the first movie. Because storyline, the reactor, which they've named Sissy, goes tits up and transports Tree into another dimension where she relives the same day as she did in the previous movie over and over again with different variations, including the identity of Babyface, whose mask, despite being in an alternate dimension, still looks like someone made a cast mold out of one of Goliath's hemorrhoids and covered it in a paedophile's dream. Much like the last movie, the entire tone has been established before the opening scene has even begun via the distribution company's logo. Prior to Happy Death Day introducing itself, Universal Studios' name is looped, implying that you're about to watch a movie inspired by a repeat button. The sequel has taken influence from this, adapted it to its own premise by taking said logo and implementing cell division, giving us 3 different universes, or a multiverse if you will, resulting in subtlety that's less discreet than the Grand Tour's racism. Happy Death Day to You deviates from its horror roots and focuses more on a sci-fi kind of vibe. During my review of its predecessor, I said that it was basically a game of soggy biscuit between Groundhog Day, Live, Die, Repeat and Scream. An opinion I still stand by today because, well, it's correct. The sequel has not carried that MO across. It feels more like a love child between Back to the Future and The Big Bang Theory, produced during an awkward three-way where the horror genre barely got a look in. I do admire the bravery undertaken, but I feel that it will leave horror fans frustrated over the lack of slasher content within the movie. To escape the alternate universe, Tree employs the science students as well as Carter, who even in this dimension remains the most generic cunt alive, to input the correct algorithm into Sissy that will get her home. Problem is, there are many different equations that take a long time to program into the reactor. Another problem is that after Tree dies, the day resets itself, as does the memory of progress belonging to her helpers, so she has to take full advantage of her reading Steiner ability and keep a record of what algorithms haven't worked. To make this whole ordeal slightly more pleasant, the group suggests that Tree keeps taking her own life instead of being murdered constantly. I can definitely see the logic to that. I personally would turn myself into a Dark Souls character and give myself near impossible challenges, you know, for the sheer fucking masochistic degradation. From a horror fan's perspective, there are issues. A movie of this nature should sacrifice logic for entertainment. The average slasher enthusiast doesn't give a single fuck about the scientific accuracy, they just want to see our protagonist get butchered as much as possible in as many creative ways imaginable. The original, as mentioned in my review, did not take advantage of its ideal premise to have a murder montage and only featured Tree dying a mere 11 times, one of which was in her sleep, as well as an extra triplet of deaths relating to other characters, giving Happy Death Day a grand total of 14 demises. Happy Death Day to You's body count was even less than that. Grand total of 3 on-screen kills at the hands of Babyface, plus another additional 3 murders committed by other people, making the thirst for homicide left behind by its predecessor still very much uncatered for. Don't get me wrong, I had some fun with the suicide montage. I enjoyed the fact that someone called Tree jumped out of a plane with like a leaf written on it, and I giggled over the fact that the wood chipper she dived into had Tree removal services stamped on the side of it. Oh, and one of the loop resets has a gorgeous transition that's very reminiscent of the baseball bat kill from the first movie, but unfortunately any chance of a bloodbath died when Tree decided to go on the self-slaughter path. Babyface's services became so moot to the point where his presence on the movie poster turned into a state of irony. And usually with this type of medium I enjoy the thinking process behind trying to work out the identity of the killer, but the character's involvement was so minimal that it inspired no food for thought and eventually transformed into me practically forgetting the antagonist's existence quicker than the man who raped your mum forgot the pull-out method. With that said, on occasion Happy Death Day to You does get in touch with its roots. At the beginning it flirts with the idea of being a slasher movie, but henceforth very seldom endorses the genre. Alas, any attempt at stabby rip stab stab is derivative of its ancestors' work. Yes, I know the movie is set in the same locations with a different status quo, but we are in an alternate dimension after all. So it could have broadened its horizons beyond the hospital and Bayfield High campus when it came to the death scenes. Regarding the former, Tree was being stalked by Babyface in the done-to-death dimly lit hospital corridor with the addition of some budget-slaying plastic sheets, and in the case of the latter, name me one recent horror movie fronted by teenage knife fodder that didn't involve some sort of building related to education. Oh, fuck off, Hellfest. MVP, of course, goes to Jessica Rothe. This bitch can fucking act. Much like her performance in Happy Death Day, she carries this movie from start to finish. Her range is on full display during the entire 100-minute duration and is completely wasted on this film and indeed the franchise. It's most probable that she could be handcuffed to another installment because mid-credits scene, which I didn't stick around for due to pride, but I did read up on it, there is potential for this to be a trilogy because when you start throwing multiverses into your narrative, you've got no incentive for creativity or originality to hold you back from milking that cow to fucking dust. But Blumhouse, who have expressed interest in making another one, if you're watching this, at least humour me and call the next one Happy Death Day Tree. Get it? Because her name is Tree and it would be the third. Oh, shut the fuck up. Like you could come up with something better. Happy Death Day to you attempts eclectic and should be commemorated for it, but sadly fails to consistently deliver at every direction it takes, so if you're into seeing diluted quality in one medium that's done much better elsewhere, then go for it. But if you're going into this movie craving a higher death toll than John Wick's average brunch, you'll wind up feeling more betrayed than Harvey Weinstein's abstinence ring.